At the time all of this happened, I was 41 and my wife was 39. Our teenage son had a friend who was 19 years old. I became suspicious that something was up when I came home from work one day. My son's friend was talking to my wife in the kitchen, standing awfully close to her. I couldn't hide the surprise on my face when I openly asked where our son was. They both spoke up to tell me that he just left to run to the store. I clarified, by himself, to point out how odd it was that they were spending time alone. The boy moved away from my wife a little, looking down at his shoes. He said that it was kind of a bummer, so he ran out the front door to go catch up with him. Although I was trying to hide my concern when I looked at my wife, she saw it. She offered the excuse that our son's friend wanted to ask her for baking tips. Apparently, he was signed up for a mother-son baking contest with his mom and wanted to surprise her with his knowledge. She blushed slightly and resumed getting out the stuff she needed to bake a pie. This was believable to me at the time, even though it was odd. I trusted my wife because in all the years we were married up until this point, she was faithful to me. I'm not sure how much time passed from that, but one day I returned home from work again to find my wife laying on the living room couch in lingerie I never saw before. She said it was a sexy surprise for a deserving husband. After we had a really fun time, my son walked into the house. Thank God we had time to go upstairs and change. The whole time I thought he was already home in his room. He asked where his friend was, which confused me even more. My wife quickly told my son that he left only a minute after he did and asked if he had caught up to him. My son said no, and that was weird because he thought he was going to wait for him to return. My wife added that my son's friend had said that he forgot he promised his dad he would help him work on something. This was getting stranger by the minute, and my wife was visibly uncomfortable. My son could tell that something didn't make sense, but dropped it and went to his room. I looked at my wife perplexed. I didn't know what to say to her. For some reason, it seemed unfair for me to ask her if she was hiding something. As much as I wanted to, I didn't ask her any questions. Fast forward some time, and I was returning home from a work trip. It was supposed to last 4 days, but since I already knew all about the 4th day's topic, I was permitted to go home early. I decided not to tell my wife or son and surprise them by showing up early at dinner time with a large to-go order from our favorite restaurant. When it arrived, the house was quiet. I called them but got no response. I wasn't worried right away. They could have gone out. I just put the food down in the kitchen and turned around to see my wife standing in the hallway. She looked disheveled and very concerned. I greeted her warmly as I always do, and she forced herself to copy my tone. I asked her where our son was, but before she answered, I caught something in the corner of my eye on the stairs. I looked instinctively and thought it was my son for a millisecond, but it wasn't. It was my son's friend. He looked extremely embarrassed and fearful when he greeted me and said he must be going. He rushed out the front door without closing it. I asked my wife again where our son was, but a million more questions were forming in my head. She said that our son went to another friend's house and that the boy was just leaving to catch up with him. This was the last straw. I asked her why I had discovered her alone more than once with our son's friend. She was stunned by the question and attempted to say that nothing like that was going on. I told her that something definitely was and that it was not acceptable for her to be alone with a young man. I asked her why they both looked so guilty when I got here, and she said it was because she was worried about how it would look from my point of view. When my son got home later, I asked him if he knew his friend was over here while he was at another friend's house. He said no and stood by his answer when I told him he must be completely honest with me. I thanked him and left his room. From this point, I knew something was happening, but I couldn't prove it. I was pretty good friends with one of our neighbors and decided to ask him if he noticed anything. It took him a whole day to call me back and tell me that he remembered seeing a boy running out of our back door a while back. I asked him to narrow down when this happened, and he eventually told me it was the very same day I came home from work to find my wife on the couch wearing lieri. He said he'd be willing to testify for me so that my wife might confess. After finding this out, I called my wife's parents. Think what you will. I became really close to them over the years, and if anyone knew my wife, it would be them. When I confided in them all that happened and what I saw, they sided with me. They said that I wasn't crazy and that she was probably up to something. They apologized to me already and said they would be willing to attend a family meeting to try to get to the bottom of it. For the duration of the strange occurrences, my wife was extra attentive to my needs and nervous whenever I started talking to her son about his day or to whatever she was up to. By chance, on the day and time I planned to have everyone come over, she was extremely nervous. It was the perfect time for us to confront her with the information I gathered. When the three of them arrived, her face looked like her worst fears were realized. She tried to ask why they were there, but you could tell in the way she asked that she already knew it was about her. Her mannerisms and expression totally gave her away. She tried to play dumb while we told her what we thought was happening, and we added that if there was ever a time to come clean for the sake of the family, it was now. Eventually, her petrified face started sobbing, and she admitted that she slept with our son's friend. More than once. It was the most pathetic thing I ever saw, coming from the woman I once loved and respected. After she confessed, I felt a metaphorical dagger go through my heart. I knew I couldn't look at her the same way ever again. As a matter of fact, no one could look at her the same way after that. The neighbor left awkwardly, and her parents told her that they were extremely disappointed and couldn't accept this behavior from the daughter they raised. They said they planned to disown her, and she wasn't welcome at their house. I could barely hear the last part because she was crying so loudly and begging them not to do it. I started packing immediately after her parents hugged me goodbye. It took all my strength to ignore her as she cried for forgiveness. When we sat down with our son to explain what was happening, he looked at his mother like he hated her. Despite her crying and apologies, he quickly elected to live with me so that he could start over and meet new friends. It was like he knew how quickly this story was going to spread among his peers. After his prediction was proven correct, he made it clear to his mother that she ruined his life by cheating on his father. She still lives in the old family home, but she's alone and struggling to pay any rent for it. I could evict her at this point, but I'm waiting until I know it's time for that. Oh, I am so sorry to hear this happen to you. After so many years with a faithful partner, you expect that they would be fully aware of the consequences of cheating. You would also expect them to place more value on the relationship, having put so much time into it. She knew that she was going behind your back and taking advantage of your son's friend. She wasn't thinking about anyone but herself and how to hide this betrayal from you and your son. Well, it's completely up to the person who's been betrayed. I fully support your decision to end the marriage. It's a shame that the relationship you built over years and years suddenly came to an end, but it was probably the best option after this level of deceit. Some people might have chosen to try and struggle to forgive and forget what their spouse did to them, but it can easily become a nightmare. I wish the best of luck and good fortune to you and your son. Now for today's second story. Yesterday, I just found out that my wife has slept with another man on multiple occasions. She's been seeing him for several months, if not most of this year. But toward the end of last year, we had been having a bit of a rough time, and she claimed that she had emotionally checked out. It was at this time that she began talking to this man. She stated that they had met up once and just talked. She said that it was at this time that she decided that she was making a mistake and chose to break things off. She had actually confessed to this in March, and we both began seeing therapists to try and work things out. In my opinion, and per her own statement, things were going well, and we had been spending a lot of time together in the last few months with barely any arguments. She stopped seeing her therapist, and so did I after we spent a week-long vacation together that went great. Yesterday, I found out that this was not quite the truth. She admitted that she had still been seeing him, and that they met up again in the early part of the year at a hotel and had sex. She stated that this was not the only time, and it had happened at least 2 other instances while they had spent time together. She spent time with him on multiple occasions while claiming to me to be spending time with her female friend. She claimed she did not sleep with him during every meeting. Here's where things get messier. She claimed she had been trying to break things off for a long time, but he was holding the original event over her with the unspoken threat of telling me everything. She stated that once we began working things out, and after she originally confessed, was when she tried to break things off. She claimed to have been scared to tell me the full truth because she didn't want to lose me and is still in love with me. She said she thought he was crazy and might show up in her house if she refused to see him. She most recently saw him a week ago, and she denied sleeping with him. She stated she did not want to go see him and that she cried begging him not to make her. All this is extra confusing on top of everything else. I forgave her after the original confession because she said nothing physical happened and she had cut off all communication with him months ago. That was a lie. She had recently been giving me treats and gifts, as well as framing recent pictures of us around the house. This made me think things were going well. We share a home and several cats together, and I love them like my own children. I have loved her unlike anything else in this world and would have done anything for her. I hate the idea of losing any of the life we had together, but can I ever trust her? But can this ever be fixed? Should I even try? Proceed. For clarification, the app was married. His betrayed spouse caught him and informed me. After confronting my spouse, she confessed. There was no proof of a physical affair, but she admitted to it then. I've finally been able to eat again, and I've spoken to a good friend who has my back for support. Opa exaffuates. I'm sorry that you find yourself in this situation, realizing the level of confusion and hurt you're dealing with. Are you able to create some space from your wayward wife so you can figure out what's the best way forward for you at this time? If you can implement the 180 and gray rock methods, insist that she get back into intensive care, and figure out why she could give herself permission to step out of your marriage, while you also get some intensive care for infidelity trauma for yourself to learn how to deal with all of this going forward. Also, don't be afraid to go speak to a lawyer now, so you can figure out what divorce looks like and start the process. You made a mistake the first time by forgiving her, and yet she still continued to lie to you without little to no consequences, meaning you both rug-swept the whole event and never worked through the actual issues, or her why. So essentially, you gave her a pass, and now moving forward, whether this app is good or bad, or she's bored or really scared of him. If you let her move, there will be another app down the road. So you really do need to look out for yourself and work towards being a better version of you in case things don't work out. I wish you the best of luck with your situation. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care.